assuming we get this undisputed fight between Oleksandr Usyk and Tyson Fury, I want to talk about some of the tactics that both guys might use. In particular, Tyson Fury, because he hasn't fought a small mobile heavyweight anywhere close to the dimensions of Oleksandr Usyk since the Steve Cunningham fight. And Tyson Fury, in case you didn't know, go look this up for yourselves, says that the Steve Cunningham fight was the toughest of his whole career. There are a couple of interviews in which he says that Steve Cunningham was too slippery. I think he compared him to a conger eel in terms of how slippery he was. He said he was so slippery and fast, I'm paraphrasing here, that I basically couldn't box with him because he was just too difficult to hit. And especially after Fury gets dropped in the second round, he realized, you know what? I need to just jump on this guy. I need to walk him down, lean on him, and turn it into a big man versus little man fight, not try all this technical stuff, because he's going to be pinging me with shots all night. He's going to be slippery. I'm going to be struggling to pin him down. He's going to make me look clumsy. I can't allow all that. I've just got to get hold of this guy, brutalize him, and take him out. And that's what Fury did. And especially in retrospect, it was a brilliant change of tactics by Tyson Fury. The way he switched it around on Steve Cunningham, took the bull by the horns, because he did what Anthony Joshua was supposed to do in both Usyk fights, but failed to do. Bully the little man. Tyson Fury did it. He has shown time and time again that he can get the job done no matter what happens, whether he gets dropped, whether he gets hurt, whatever takes place in that ring, Fury finds a way to win because he has the ring IQ, not just the heart, but the ring IQ to switch things up on the fly, to understand what needs to be done. Now, against Usyk, as I say, this will be the first time he's fought a small mobile heavyweight since Cunningham. The closest thing he's had since would be Otto Wallin, and I encourage you all to revisit that fight because Fury was having plenty of problems in there against Wallin. The warning signs that he was going to have a tricky night were there even before he got cut because Wallin was actually pinging him with a few shots. I think Fury struggled to get to grips with Wallin's foot speed and also his southpaw stance. As most orthodox fighters, he's not used to fighting southpaws. Otto Wallin is several levels below Usyk in every department. Wallin moves relatively well for a heavyweight, but nowhere near as well as Usyk. Wallin is a southpaw, but nowhere near as dynamic a southpaw as Usyk. Doesn't move his head as well, isn't as fast, may not even hit as hard as Oleksandr Usyk, isn't as elusive, etc., isn't as fluid. So if Fury's going in there and he's finding Otto Wallin awkward, are we to believe that he wouldn't find Usyk awkward and that he'd just be far too big and strong and it's just inevitable that he wins? I'm not so sure about that. I suspect that Fury's approach in a Usyk fight would be very similar to what we saw against Steve Cunningham and Otto Wallin after he suffered the cut against Wallin, which is pure pressure. Tyson Fury isn't afraid to win ugly. He's not worried about looking clumsy or less than graceful in the ring as long as he gets the win. And I think he would have to win ugly against Usyk. I struggle to see him winning any other way. I think that he would try to implement what Anthony Joshua was too timid to implement against Usyk, because AJ really only implemented that kind of game plan in the 9th round in their rematch. Other than that, he was standing off and throwing hard shots in the rematch, yes, but not applying any kind of serious pressure. Tyson Fury would apply serious pressure. He's been in there against Deontay Wilder, arguably the biggest puncher not only in the division now, but for many years. So if you're brave enough, if you've got enough belief in your own punch resistance and your own defense, and you're single-minded and determined enough to walk straight into the fire against an enormous puncher like Deontay Wilder and walk him down, then I see no reason why Fury would be hesitant to walk Oleksandr Usyk down. I'm sure that's what he would do. There are some people who think that Fury can use his height and reach against Usyk. I don't see it. I don't think he's coordinated enough to be able to box with Usyk on the outside. And some people are going to think that sounds crazy. But again, revisit the Steve Cunningham fight. Revisit the Otto Wallin fight. Fury looks very well coordinated and slick and all that when he's fighting Deontay Wilder, because Deontay Wilder is one of the worst coordinated heavyweights out there. Loads of people looked like really good boxers in front of Wilder. Artur Szpilka looked like a fantastic boxer against Wilder. Gerald Washington looked like a fantastic boxer against Wilder. Do you know what I mean? So Fury is a fantastic boxer and he's a much better boxer than the guys I just mentioned. But the Wilder fights, I think, have maybe flattered his boxing ability a bit. Yeah, he outboxed Klitschko, but again, with Klitschko, he used his extra reach and he moved around the ring when he was much lighter than he is now. And Klitschko was always a guy who was cautious and hesitant. He wasn't a guy that was going to go for it. When Klitschko decided to go for it in the 12th round, he was able to hit Fury without that much trouble. And again, Klitschko is a similar size to Fury in terms of weight. Oleksandr Usyk's 220 pounds. So I just don't see Klitschko-esque tactics or even the way that Fury boxed against Dillian Whyte, a slow-footed guy. I just don't see that working against you. I think Usyk's too fast for that. I think Fury's going to have to walk him down and, again, do another Steve Cunningham job. And maybe he will be successful. I'm not 100% confident that he will, because Usyk is not only very good defensively. I mean, when AJ was attacking Usyk, when watching the fight live in that 9th round, it looked worse than it actually was when you saw the slow motion replay, because Usyk was actually slipping and blocking and riding a lot of those punches. Some of them did land clean, but a lot of them were evaded by Usyk's defensive skills. And AJ is not a complete fighter the way that Tyson Fury is, but he does do certain things better than Fury. AJ, for example, is a faster combination puncher with the hooks and uppercuts than Fury is. So when he was laying into Usyk with like fast hooks and uppercuts, Fury isn't as fast in those situations with the short punches. He's a bit more cumbersome, a little more clumsy with those type of shots up close. I think it would be easier for Usyk to get away from Fury shots than it was from AJ's shots. Fury will be throwing more, so that obviously increases his chances of landing. But I think if you were to take one sequence where Fury tries to do what AJ does, I think Usyk would find it easier to get away from what Fury would be doing in just one sequence. But obviously Fury would have to do it continuously over the course of a fight and eventually wear Usyk down, make him tired from having to constantly move and then get on top of him, lean on him, be all rough. Fury won't be afraid to do all that. He'll be way more rough than Anthony Joshua was. He was still far too polite in the ring. I know he got rude after the fight, but in the ring, he was far too polite in terms of the way he approached the fight. So that's what I think Tyson Fury would do. And as for Usyk, he would just replicate what he has been doing against all these big guys, beating them with timing, speed, head movement. There are so many moving parts with Usyk. His head's all over the place moving. His feet are moving. His hands are moving. He's up and down. He's bending at the waist. He's giving you different looks. He's batting away your jab. I mean, there's just so much stuff going on. You end up bog-eyed. And Tyson Fury is smart enough to know that he's going to end up bog-eyed if he tries to box and do all that. So that's what Usyk's going to be doing. I think it's going to be straightforward in terms of the styles. I don't think you have to overthink it that much. Maybe I'm underthinking it because there are some people who believe that Fury's boxing skills at long range will be utilized against Usyk. I guess we'll find out if and when the fight gets made. But I'm just going off past performances against somewhat similar opponents. We've seen what Usyk does against big guys, and we've seen, if you go back far enough, what Fury does with small mobile guys. He doesn't tend to box with him. He didn't even box Wallin. Wallin is not even that small. He's like 6'5" or whatever. But he's got pretty quick feet and he's a southpaw. And I know Fury got cut, but again, look at what was happening in the fight prior to Fury getting cut. Like Wallin was pinging him. Do you know what I mean? And this is supposed to be a guy who is the defensive wizard, right? In Tyson Fury. Well, yeah, he's good defensively, relatively speaking, but he don't have a defense like Usyk. So that's my take on the fight if and when it gets made. I certainly hope it does. Tyson Fury says that Usyk wasn't impressive in the AJ rematch. Therefore, we should see the fight next, right? If you're really not that impressed, then, get Frank Warren and Bob Arum, whoever else, to contact Usyk's people and make the fight. Load of money in it. I don't want to hear nothing about $500 million because that's just silly talk. But if he's serious about it, make the fight next. Give the fans what we want, an undisputed champion. There hasn't been an undisputed champion at heavyweight since Lennox Lewis, and there has never been an undisputed champion at heavyweight in the 4-belt era. So obviously, the WBO belt was around when Lewis was around, but it wasn't taken seriously back then. It had the status of an IBO belt. The Klitschkos really were instrumental in legitimizing the WBO belt. There was a couple other fighters too in lower divisions, but really the Klitschkos helped to bring the WBO finally into the fold where it's recognized on par with the other sanctioning bodies. But yeah, up until the Lewis era, the WBO was never taken that seriously. It was like the IBO. Anyway, it's all for history. The first 4-belt undisputed champion at heavyweight and the first undisputed champion since Lennox Lewis. Let's get it on. Let's do it. No excuses, no nonsense, nobody pricing themselves out. Give the fans what we want, an undisputed champion. Until next time, I'm out. If you're tired of the biased narratives and mass censorship on mainstream platforms, and you want to be part of a community of critical thinkers who love free speech just as much as you do, then come and join me on Patreon and access my weekly no-holds-barred, censorship-free podcast where we lift the lid on a wide variety of controversial topics. It's not mainstream friendly, it's not politically correct, but that's the whole point. We dare to stand as a beacon of reason against an army of insanity. Just head on over to my Patreon page and select the tier called Hatman Hot Topics. You'll gain access to a minimum of 2 hours of exclusive content every single week, including podcasts, videos, interviews, live stream Q&As, as well as my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. Not to mention a vast back catalog of hundreds of hours of previous episodes. You can listen via the Patreon app with the option to download in high quality MP3. We've also got an Element group where you can come and chat and hang out with myself and other members. Unlike Discord, it has full end-to-end encryption, is decentralized, and is 100% censorship free. You can also send voice notes as well as much larger audio and video files than you can on Discord. So come and sign up on Patreon. There's no contract, there's no commitment. You can cancel at any time, and it's cheaper than a cup of coffee. So I'll see you over there. I'm out.